What if the global price of gold, the most ancient form of money, wasn't determined by free markets, but by a secret cartel of governments? What if, for years, central banks quietly conspired behind closed doors to manipulate the world as financial foundation, not for profit, but for power? And what if this covert operation didn't just fail, but triggered one of the greatest monetary shocks in history? A shock that still shapes our lives today? Welcome to the story of the London Gold Pool, the hidden alliance of the world as most powerful central banks who waged a secret war against gold to protect the supremacy of the US dollar. A story so well covered up that most investors have never heard of it. A story that reveals a disturbing truth. When currencies are threatened, governments will do anything to maintain control. Before we unlock the conspiracy, we must travel back to a time when money wasn't pixels on a screen, but precious metal. After World War II, the global economy was rebuilt on a new monetary framework called the Bretton Woods system. Under this system, the US dollar became the world's reserve currency, but with one critical promise. Every $35 could be exchanged for 1 ounce of gold. This convertibility made the dollar as good as gold. And with America holding more than half of the planet's gold supply, confidence was high. But the system had a hidden flaw. A flaw only a few economists saw coming. Because if the U.S. printed more dollars than it held gold to back them, the entire global monetary order could collapse. And by the late 1950s, that's exactly what began happening. Europe had recovered. America's military spending exploded during the Cold War. Dollars flooded the world. More dollars than gold existed to redeem them. Confidence in the dollar began to crack. Foreign governments started demanding real gold instead of paper promises. The U.S. Treasury vaults, once overflowing, began to drain. The threat was clear. If too many nations requested their gold back at once, the dollar would be exposed as a lie. This wasn't just an economic problem. It was a geopolitical emergency. The United States and its allies couldn't allow gold, the traditional symbol of financial power, to rise above the dollar. So, in 1961, in secret meetings deep inside European banking halls, 8 powerful central banks quietly formed a conspiracy network. Their mission: suppress the price of gold, maintain the illusion of dollar stability, and keep Bretton Woods alive, no matter the cost. It was called the London Gold Pool. This wasn't speculation, it wasn't subtle. It was coordinated price manipulation on a global scale, and the world had no idea it was happening. But like all secret operations driven by desperation, it was doomed from the start. Because the more they tried to hide the dollar's weakness, the more obvious it became. This is how the London Gold Pool began, a covert battle between governments and free markets. A battle they were destined to lose. To understand how the London Gold Pool operated, imagine the world's biggest banks acting like a team of firefighters. But instead of water, they used gold. And instead of flames, they fought rising prices. The pool was composed of United States, leading the effort, providing half the gold, United Kingdom, France, West Germany, Italy, Belgium, Netherlands, Switzerland. They agreed, whenever the price of gold in London, the key global market, tried to rise above $35 an ounce, the pool would flood the market with gold to force the price down. This meant artificially selling gold at a loss to protect the dollar. Why? Because if gold rose above $35, it would signal the dollar was overvalued and the promise of convertibility was a fraud. So every morning in London, traders gathered at the Rothschild Bank to fix the gold price. But behind the scenes, a handful of central bankers monitored markets like nervous gamblers watching the scoreboard. If demand surged, release more gold. If confidence faltered, release even more. If nations requested redemption, panic quietly. They believed that confidence in money could be engineered, managed, controlled. But confidence is fragile, and while central banks dumped thousands of tons of gold into the market. They underestimated one thing: smart investors can smell weakness. The rise of speculation. As more dollars circulated worldwide, suspicion kept growing. Foreign governments, especially France under President Charles de Gaulle, were openly critical of the U.S. exporting inflation. In a fiery 1965 speech, de Gaulle accused America of using its reserve currency status as an exorbitant privilege. He began sending ships, literal naval vessels, to New York to exchange French dollars for gold bars. Not paper statements, not promises, real, physical, gold. And he wasn't alone. Switzerland, Germany, even private investors. Everyone started rushing for the exits. Gold drained from the U.S. Treasury and from London vaults, and central bankers could no longer deny the truth. The system wasn't stable. It was hemorrhaging. Cause and effect. The pool tightens. The more gold they sold, the more clear it became that gold was undervalued, and that created a dangerous profit opportunity. Buy gold cheaply from central banks, sell it at a higher price in black markets. Suddenly, speculators realized something huge. The London gold pool guaranteed profits if you bet against the dollar. The central banks had become the losers at the table. Each day, the London gold pool grew weaker. Each day, the dollar's credibility slipped further. The pool tried to respond through secret interventions, emergency meetings, backdoor political pressure, restricting information from the public, but every action only revealed more desperation. The alliance that once looked invincible began pointing fingers. Whose gold should be used first? Whose economy should bear the cost? The United States insisted that allies must share the burden, but France refused. Why should Paris sacrifice its gold to defend Washington's financial mistakes? Tensions boiled. Meetings turned hostile. By 1967, cracks in the alliance were no longer secret. The breaking point. November 1967, a quiet earthquake struck the system. The British devalued the pound. This sent shockwaves through foreign exchange markets. If the British currency could devalue, why not the dollar next? Investors panicked, rushing to gold with a frenzy the pool had never seen. In just weeks, an astonishing 1,000 tons of gold left London vaults. The pool was burning through its defenses. Then came March 1968. A flood of gold demand hit with such force that the London market had to temporarily shut down, the first time in history. Behind closed doors, the pool collapsed. The members knew the truth. They had lost. Gold couldn't be controlled. The dollar was exposed. The London gold pool was officially dead. But instead of admitting defeat, they scrambled for a desperate final fix. The two-tier system. A last attempt at control. Under pressure from panic, central banks created a strange half-solution. A public market where gold price could float. A private market where central banks still traded at $35. They hoped this would maintain the illusion of stability. It didn't. Everyone realized the truth. If central banks themselves no longer believed in $35 gold, why would anyone else? Confidence, the only thing keeping the system alive, evaporated. The day of reckoning was coming. And when it hit, the global financial order would be rewritten forever. Cause and effect, the collapse of convertibility. By 1971, the U.S. gold supply had fallen from over 20,000 tons to around 8,100 tons, the same number still held today. Foreign governments lined up, demanding gold redemption on a scale never seen before. President Richard Nixon faced a brutal choice. Keep the gold window open. America loses everything. Close convertibility. Admit the dollar was no longer backed by gold. On August 15, 1971, Nixon went on television and declared, "The United States will suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold." Temporary. A political lie. That suspension became permanent. The Bretton Woods system, the foundation of post-war finance, died in an instant. Gold was finally free from manipulation. The U.S. dollar became a pure fiat currency, and the world entered a new era of inflation, debt, and financial engineering. But the story doesn't end here, because the same forces that guided the London gold pool never truly disappeared. The playbook was preserved. The desire for control remained, and today, half a century later, those same patterns are re-emerging. What if another secret manipulation is underway? Right now? What if central banks are still fighting gold, just with different weapons? And what does this mean for the future of our money? The collapse of the London gold pool wasn't just the end of a covert operation. It was the birth of a new global monetary experiment. For the first time in history, the world ran entirely on paper promises. Money created by governments without physical backing. The gold anchor was gone. Discipline vanished with it. The result? A global explosion in debt, inflation, speculation, financial instability. The dollar stayed dominant, but only through confidence, not convertibility. And the question that haunted the 1970s still haunts markets today. How long can confidence last when money is backed by nothing but trust? The secret patterns return. The London gold pool had taught central banks something dangerous and powerful. When markets challenge authority, you intervene harder, and in secret if necessary. So they adapted, they modernized, and they gained new tools. Instead of dumping physical gold on markets, they began using futures contracts, derivatives, central bank swap lines, quantitative easing, interest rate manipulation. Paper gold became the new weapon, a way to simulate supply without actually losing real metal. By the 1980s and 1990s, billions of dollars of gold existed only in trading accounts, unbacked by physical bars. This new system changed the game. If gold prices rise during a debt crisis, confidence falls. So instead of letting gold expose weakness, they engineered weakness out of gold. The legacy of the gold pool was alive, just invisible. Central banks flip the script. But something fascinating happened. While the financial system pushed paper gold, central banks quietly became massive buyers of real gold again. Look at the numbers. For decades after 1971, central banks sold gold, driving prices down. Starting around 2008, after the global financial crisis, central banks reversed course. Today, they are buying more gold than at any time in modern history. Why the sudden urgency to own the metal they spent years suppressing? Because confidence is cracking again. Massive debt, persistent inflation, currency wars, trade conflicts, unstable geopolitics, the same ingredients that doomed the London gold pool are back. Only stronger. Cause and effect. When trust fades, gold rises. Let's examine the pattern. 1. Too many dollars printed. 2. Other nations question value. 3. Gold becomes alternative. 4. Governments intervene. 5. Intervention fails. 6. Gold price explodes. 7. Monetary reset follows. This exact cycle ran from 1961 to 1971. And now, we are living through another version of it. Today, 3 forces are accelerating the move back to gold. The rise of BRICS nations challenging dollar dominance, record U.S. deficits, and global distrust in U.S. fiscal discipline, countries repatriating gold from Western vaults, Germany, Turkey, Hungary, Poland, all pulling gold home. China and Russia hoarding gold at unprecedented speed. Just like France in the 1960s, nations want real treasure, not digital IOUs. It is a direct attack on the dollar SS authority, the very scenario the gold pool was created to defeat. The modern gold war. Quiet but global. Instead of 8 Western banks working together. Today, we have 2 rival blocs. Block 1, dollar-based system, U.S., Europe, Japan. Western allies, defending the dollar as the main reserve currency, using paper markets to influence gold price. Block 2, gold accumulators, China, Russia, Middle East, most of the developing world, turning gold into a weapon against the dollar, building systems for trade without U.S. currency. This isn't conspiracy theory. It's geopolitics. Gold is no longer a passive asset. It's a tool of financial independence. We're watching a silent de-dollarization unfold. The world is preparing for a future where the dollar isn't king. History rhymes, confidence in crisis. Just like the 1960s. The U.S. prints more money than global trust can support. Allies privately question the dollar's credibility. Gold demand rises beneath the surface. Central banks intervene to downplay weakness. Cracks form in the monetary system, and then one event triggers panic. Maybe a debt crisis, maybe a geopolitical shock, maybe a currency breakup. No one can predict the exact spark, but we can study the fuse. And it looks eerily familiar. In 1967, it was the British pound devaluation that detonated the gold pool. In the 2020s, what will be the breaking point? A U.S. default scare? A collapse in confidence in bonds? A foreign nation openly demanding gold settlement? The question is not if a shift will happen, it's when. Cause and effect. When the game ends. Every financial manipulation eventually fails for the same reason. Markets are stronger than governments. You can hide weakness for a while, you can distort prices, you can threaten and deny, but sooner or later, reality breaks through. Confidence collapses, and the system resets. When that happens, those holding paper promises suffer. Those holding real assets survive. The London gold pool proved this with brutal clarity. Gold is the final judge of monetary truth. Today, that truth-telling power is returning. But this time, the consequences may be global, not just American. Because now, every major economy runs on the same unstable system the U.S. once did alone. A fiat world, built on infinite debt, with nothing backing it. Once again, the world is asking, is the dollar really worth what it claims to be? And once again, gold is rising to answer. We have arrived at the point where past and present collide. The London gold pool was a warning, a financial scandal hidden behind diplomacy, political power, and the illusion of monetary stability. But it wasn't just a failure of policy. It was a reveal of truth. Currencies backed by promises eventually fail the people who trust them. And today, the signs are everywhere that we are moving toward another breaking point, a modern replay of the same forces that collapsed Bretton Woods. Let's connect the final pieces. The fallout of fiat money. When gold convertibility disappeared in 1971, governments gained unlimited financial power. They could print money without restraint. They could spend without consequences. They could inflate away debts by destroying currency value. What followed was predictable: explosive growth in global debt, falling purchasing power of money, boom and bust cycles driven by speculation. In 1971, global debt stood near $1 trillion. Today, it exceeds $300 trillion. That isn't economic growth. It's financial engineering. A system that requires ever-increasing debt just to stay alive is not stable. It's a bubble waiting for a pin, a new era of monetary competition. When the London gold pool collapsed, the dollar did not instantly die. Instead, it transformed into something more powerful: a weapon. The U.S. built a system where global trade, especially oil, could only be purchased in dollars. This birthed the petrodollar era and preserved demand for the American currency. But now, oil trade is expanding into Chinese yuan. Russia and Iran are bypassing dollar settlements entirely. Saudi Arabia, once the foundation of the petrodollar, is openly exploring a multipolar currency system. These are not random headlines. They're strategic shifts. Just like France in the 1960s, nations are signaling they no longer trust the dollar's promises. And when trust fades, gold rises as the alternative. Gold, the comeback of real money. Look at the numbers. The price of gold has climbed steadily for decades. Central banks are hoarding gold at the fastest pace in history. Private investors are turning to gold during inflation cycles. Nations are repatriating gold reserves from foreign vaults. Gold is increasingly used in international settlement agreements. Even digital innovations reflect this shift. Collateralized stablecoins backed by physical gold are growing rapidly. Countries are exploring settlement systems linked to commodities instead of fiat. The future may not be a return to a full gold standard, but it is absolutely a return to gold-anchored credibility. And central banks know it. Just like in the 1960s, the official messaging says, "Everything is under control." But behind closed doors, they are preparing for the opposite. The modern warning signs. Compare these two timelines: 1960s, before collapse, rising government debt. Foreign distrust grows. Gold buying increases. Price intervention intensifies. Speculators attack the fiat system. A triggering event exposes reality. The world monetary order resets 2020s. Today, record-breaking government debt. Widespread distrust of U.S. fiscal policy. Central banks stockpile gold futures and derivatives manipulation soars. Nations challenge dollar supremacy. A future trigger, still unknown, looms. A global monetary reset is underway. Different era, same story. Different tools, same intentions. Different stage, same outcome. The London gold pool taught us confidence is not an everlasting resource. Once it breaks, it doesn't slowly decline, it collapses. What happens when confidence finally ends? We don't need imagination. History gives us a roadmap. When a currency loses global confidence: 1. More money is printed to delay collapse. 2. Inflation accelerates. 3. People flee into real assets. 4. Governments impose tighter controls. 5. The system buckles under panic. 6. A new monetary order replaces the old. This will not be the end of money, but the end of money as we know it. In the new system, authority will shift away from unlimited fiat money, toward assets with intrinsic value, toward decentralized, trust-based systems, toward currencies backed by real collateral, toward gold, once again, as a benchmark of truth. The same truth that toppled the London gold pool. Money must be backed by reality, not illusion. The ghost of the gold pool. The London gold pool is not a forgotten relic of economic history. It's a reminder that the most powerful institutions in the world, central banks, governments, financial elites, cannot permanently defeat free markets. They can suppress, they can delay, they can lie, but they cannot escape the final audit of value. Gold is that audit, and the ledger is being called in. Final 3 takeaways. Here are the most important lessons from the entire story. Takeaway number 1. Monetary power depends entirely on confidence, and confidence can vanish overnight. Takeaway number 2. Governments will manipulate markets in secret to maintain control, until reality forces the truth into the open. Takeaway Yarker 3. Gold remains the ultimate measure of monetary trust, no matter how much technology evolves. A final warning: we are approaching a moment very similar to 1971. Rising global tension, expanding debt and inflation, falling trust in currency, central banks preparing quietly for change. The next reset may be bigger, because this time, the entire world uses the same fragile system. If the dollar stumbles, the global economy shakes with it. This isn't fear. This is history speaking. And history only repeats for those who ignore it. Natural call to action. If you found this story eye-opening and you want to understand the forces shaping money, gold, and global power, subscribe for more financial history that explains the world we live in today. Comment your thoughts. Do you think a new monetary reset is coming? And share this video, because the truth about money should never stay hidden. This has been the London Gold Pool, the secret operation that tried to control gold and exposed the vulnerability of money. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay curious, and remember, trust is the only real currency left.